Hello everyone, welcome to Broadview. My name is Joseph. What is the most mysterious place in the United States? I believe Area 51 is top of the list in most people's minds. But in fact, there's another place where all kinds of paranormal events have taken place for a long time. It's also the only large-scale paranormal investigation site still currently underway. Well, let's take a look at the story of this mysterious place, Skinwalker Ranch. This ranch is located in northeastern Utah, covering an area of 2 square kilometers. The land is pretty much deserted now. The Shermans used to own the ranch from 1994 to 1996, so the Skinwalker Ranch is also known as the Sherman Ranch. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman set their eyes on the land, but as a condition to sell, the previous owner requested the Shermans not to dig the land. This strange request even got written into the contract. The Shermans would also have to obtain permission from the previous owner to make changes to the land. At the time, the Shermans didn't care, so the family happily moved in. But during the first day that they settled down, something strange occurred. On the day the Shermans arrived at the ranch, they were unloading their goods when an unexpected guest appeared. A wolf or a coyote-looking creature was quietly closing in on them. The creature seemed to weigh roughly 200 pounds, so it turned out to be bigger than a wolf. But after a closer look at its eyes, the family found that it looked tamed, as if it could be kept as a pet. It walked quietly in front of the Shermans, and the whole family was relieved to find that it didn't pose any immediate danger. Terry patted its head in a friendly manner, and the family proceeded with moving in. Suddenly, this creature rushed to the fence like lightning, barked at a calf, and started to drag it away with a mighty force. The Shermans were dumbfounded at first, but Terry reacted quickly. Immediately, he fired a gunshot at the creature. The creature loosened its bite on the calf after being shot, but simply backed up a few steps. Then it stared at Terry with its calm blue eyes. Terry fired another 2 shots at the creature's chest, but again it just stepped back a bit and continued to stare at him in poise. He quickly grabbed his longest shotgun intended for hunting reindeers and fired another shot at the wolf-looking creature. The bullet penetrated its body. The family saw that a piece of flesh with fur fell off. Under normal circumstances, the creature would have fallen to its death already. But again, it just took a few steps back and turned around to run away. Terry chased the creature relentlessly, but he didn't see any blood along the way. The creature disappeared after it went into the woods. Now that the family was shook and scared, they rushed to the local community to find answers. But the answer they got was that the wolves had been extinct in the community since 1929. This left the family confused. What exactly did they encounter? In any case, the whole family stayed there. Terry raised Angus, a breed of small beef cattle. The cattle adapted well to the land. As time passed, the Shermans gradually forgot about the strange encounter on this first day. But one day, Terry and his nephew came to check on the cattle. When they walked to the barn, Terry suddenly found that one of his cattle went missing. The group began looking for the calf, and they finally found it beside a bush, unfortunately dead. The calf's organs and hind legs were gone, but without any trace of blood. After that, strange things started to happen one after another. Another day, Terry and Gwen saw a car outside their house in the evening. Its headlights kept flashing. The couple went out together to take a look out of kindness. The ranch was relatively remote with few neighbors around, so they were worried that someone had lost their way. Naturally, they wanted to offer help. When they approached the vehicle, it reversed. Suddenly, the vehicle flew up into the air. It turned out that the light didn't come from a car, but from a black triangular flying object. Also, it wasn't just one light, but a string of lights. The flying object disappeared without a trace the moment it flew up into the air. After so many strange encounters, it would even bother the people who were most skeptical about ghosts or aliens. The Shermans couldn't hold back anymore. They began to ask around to make sense of their encounters. The natives of the land told the Shermans that the ranch that they had bought was called Skinwalker Ranch. It was a cursed residence of the legendary black shaman. According to the natives, the shaman shape-shifted and often turned into animals, including a creature that looked like a coyote or a wolf. Only after the black shaman's done with his crimes would he toss his animal skin to the ground. The dead animal would look like an empty shell of skin, but without any blood. To the locals there, this legend does explain the immortal giant wolf that the Shermans saw. It also solves the mystery about the death of his Angus cow. But it doesn't explain the strange triangular-shaped flying object that didn't look like a native mount in any way. The Shermans lived on the ranch for 20 months and lost over a dozen cattle throughout their stay. It became increasingly frightening for them. Finally, they couldn't take it anymore. They sold the ranch and moved away. Word spread far and wide about what had happened at the ranch. How could such an unsettling place find a buyer, though? Well, of course, there's people out there who are intrigued by places like this. The ranch was purchased by millionaire Robert Bigelow. Robert was the founder of Bigelow Aerospace, an astronautics company. He was also a super fan of aliens and UFOs. He bought Sherman's ranch and at the same time invested several $1,000,000 into a project to study the ranch. Later, he received funding from the US Department of Defense. The project was named Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The head of the research team was a biologist named Colm A. Keller. They also experienced similar paranormal phenomena as the Shermans, such as UFOs, unidentified creatures, and the animal skin apparently abandoned by the Black Shaman. They conducted various tests on the entire ranch, and the test results proved that this place indeed had anomalies. But the scientists were unable to specify the cause of the anomalies. Later, Keller wrote a 300-page report to the Pentagon. He also wrote a book called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. The book described the inside story of his experience in cooperating with the Pentagon throughout his investigation. 20 years later, Robert sold the ranch in 2016. The ranch was taken over by a Utah real estate mogul named Brandon Fugal. Brandon hired Dr. Travis Taylor to lead a team to continue researching the ranch. At the time, the Sherman Ranch became so famous that it attracted the History Channel to send their crew to film the entire investigation. Next, we'll focus on the latest findings of Dr. Taylor's team on the ranch. The research team found that the soil had strong electrical conductivity, so they conducted a series of electrical experiments. During the test, the instruments suddenly received a high-frequency feedback signal. Even more bizarre, at the same time, some of these test procedures were forcibly shut down and could not resume. This discovery excited the crew because it must mean that there's a mystery waiting to be uncovered underground. By then it was already evening, so the team went back to rest. When they woke up the next morning, the team saw an even more shocking scene on the surveillance video. A black UFO swooping down from the sky with great speed and then disappearing into the ground, as if it had drilled into the ground. Several monitors captured this image at the same time from different angles. It turned out that there really was a UFO in the vicinity of this ranch. The team cheered and continued their research. The researchers also noticed a seemingly plain but strange phenomenon. There's a well outside the old mansion. Whenever someone stood next to the well, he or she would feel nervous and even suddenly faint. Dr. Taylor, an astrophysicist who had worked at NASA for many years, had also suffered mild radiation damage at the well. He had this feeling that the well contained hidden secrets. He did tests on the area and found an unusually high magnetic field, as well as much higher than normal neutron flow. At this point, Dr. Taylor suddenly had an idea. He remembered a hypothesis put forward by the previous investigation team, who speculated that there was a temporal exit within the old mansion. So Dr. Taylor had the team use simultaneous localization and mapping to scan the old mansion inside and out. His intention was to build the three-dimensional graphics of the old mansion on the computer. The group was surprised to find that only the outer walls of the old mansion turned up on the scan data. The roof and inner walls should have data, but the image only showed a black hole in that area. It meant that all of the scan data of these locations were lost and replaced by a dark hole. Obviously, a force was trying to prevent the scanner from getting the data. After witnessing this paranormal phenomenon, Dr. Taylor decided to give it his all. He didn't care about whether the outside world would view his approach as non-scientific. He began to incorporate spirituality into the research project. Dr. Taylor invited his friend, the Jewish rabbi Ariel Bar Sadak, to chant scriptures to see what would happen. The experiment was designed in such a way that while the rabbi was chanting, the team would set up a thermal imager on the high ground outside the old mansion to observe and record the infrared data of the mansion and its surroundings. Rabbi Zadok told the group that the spirit world does exist and that an ancient spirit lives in the spirit space corresponding to the Skinwalker Ranch. The spirit considers the ranch as home, so when a human enters the area, it feels that its home is being trespassed. This spirit being is capable of opening and closing the channel that connects this space of the spirit world to that of humans. He explained that he would chant a scripture for this spirit to feel our goodwill and ask him to allow humans to stay here. When the group heard this, they all showed the "are you kidding me" look on their face. but they still invited Rabbi Sadak to give it a try. Researchers outside the old mansion carefully watched the thermal imager screen. Thermal imaging constructs images through measuring the heat emitted by an object. The different colors within the image represent different levels of heat. Originally, the old mansion was relatively warm. The colors of the mansion looked no different from the colors of the surrounding woods. But just seconds after the chanting ended, the image immediately changed. The surrounding color gradually became purple, dark blue, orange, and then red. Could this be the passage to the spirit world, they wondered. Dr. Taylor and the team hurried back to the old mansion and found that the temperature was as freezing as a refrigerator, nearly 20 degrees lower than the surrounding area. Now, the scientists present believed the rabbi's words. After the rabbi left, the team analyzed the thermal imager data carefully. They suddenly found a black thing that appeared the moment that the chanting had finished. Dr. Taylor thought if this thing was an animal, it should have a body temperature, and the color on the thermal imager should be a red or orangish, but it was black. It means that this entity didn't emit heat. Could it be the ancient spirit that the rabbi had mentioned? So Dr. Taylor decided to repeat the experiment. This time, the research team put a thermometer and a clock in the old mansion. The thermal imager generated the same image as the previous day. When the group returned to the old mansion for inspection, they found that the thermometer placed on the windowsill had actually been knocked over and dropped in the middle of the room. They also found that one of the members' computer had actually been hacked and no longer worked. When the team observed the spectrum analyzer, they found that there was an external signal intrusion, which was the cause of the computer hack, and that the intruded signal was strong and broad spectrum. The intruding signal not only hacked the computers and phones, but also interfered directly with the human brain. One staff member felt unwell and ended up driving away. While Dr. Taylor was talking to another group member, he suddenly forgot what he was going to say and felt so uncomfortable and out of breath that security rushed him into an electromagnetically shielded room. It was an all-metal enclosed room. He was inside the room for only a few seconds before he immediately recovered. After recovering, Dr. Taylor rushed back to the instruments, only to see a sight that had his jaw drop. All intrusion signals on the analysis instruments had disappeared, leaving only noise waves. Could this be a warning from the spirit to the team? They took it to mean, don't go any deeper, let's stop here. After this paranormal experience at the old ranch mansion, most of the research team began to believe the rabbi's words, that there was a strange spirit in this place. But in the end, was this spirit an alien? Or some other creature from the spirit world? The rabbi himself wasn't so sure about the answer, so the research team focused their attention back to the area outside of the ranch. According to the Sherman's description, they had seen a door that sometimes opened in the sky above the ranch. A blue spherical flying object would quickly fly out of the door, then skim through the woods of the ranch in a circle, and then it would eventually fly back into the door in the air. The door then disappeared. So Dr. Taylor decided to ride a helicopter with his assistant to the sky above and find out what had happened. When the helicopter flew to 760 meters above the ground, the helicopter's altitude radar suddenly showed that the craft was only 12 meters above the ground. It meant that 12 meters below the fuselage there was an object, which was why the altitude radar read that it was only 12 meters from the ground. But the camera inside the helicopter didn't show anything, nor could anyone on the ground see any object. The pilot rushed to contact the ground, and the team members on the ground also said that they saw nothing. Dr. Taylor broke out in a cold sweat, as you'd imagine, and he pleaded for the pilot to return to the ground in a hurry. As of now, Dr. Taylor's team is still continuing to monitor and study the strange Skinwalker Ranch. The research team has not been able to give a scientific explanation for their psychic experiences, but they had come to a few conclusions. First, there might be a large electromagnetic device under the ranch for the soil to have good conductivity. Second, the old mansion seems to be the entrance to an unusual energy channel. Third, there seems to be an invisible unknown craft above the ranch, and this object can hack into electronic devices through electromagnetic interference. But they do so in a way to indicate their presence, warning or intimidating the researchers on the ranch. Every year there are new discoveries being announced. If you'd like updates on this, we'll do another video as the research team reveals more findings. Well, that's all for today. These types of stories are fascinating. Have you had any paranormal encounters yourself? Have you had any experiences that convinced you of the spiritual world? If you do, share your story below. We'll see you next time. It meant that all of the scan data of these locations were lost and replaced by a dark hole. Obviously, a force was trying to prevent the scanner from getting the data. That was the most creepy thing I ever experienced.
What was that?